BIKEVIDS, BIKEVIDS. Please like and subscribe so you don't wish you did. BIKEVIDS, BIKEVIDS. Show about bikes for your inner kid. So if you're stuck inside on a rainy afternoon, at least you can watch our show and stop thinking about where you're gonna be riding soon. Maybe on the moon.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of BIKEVIDS. On this episode of BIKEVIDS, we're going to do a lost and found nuts and bolts. What worked, what didn't. We'll start with the bike. We'll talk about our bodies. But most importantly, you'll get into the conversation too. Did you do lost and found? What worked for you? What didn't? Have you done really hard off-road riding events? What worked for you? So let's make this a conversation, friends. We'll hop into it. And of course, where are we going to start? We'll start with the bike. If you have not watched the Lost and Found episode where you saw some race footage and the beauty of Portola, California, amongst other things, you might not know that my Haka, my Ibis Haka MX, I was in a crash. We're all okay, but the bike was broken. So for the Lost and Found this year, I am riding my Link C. There's nothing wrong with the Link C. The Link C is a great bike. I use it for commuting, road touring, road riding. It's a gravel frame and fork. I put some Terreno Drive 47s thanks to borrowing a friend's wheel set on here, and it became my gravel bike. So like I said, there's nothing wrong with the Link C per se, but it's not a bike I use for off-roading. I will say this, in my opinion, compared to the Haka, I found the ride harsh, rough, jarring, and, you know, I don't know, maybe just the Haka is that darn smooth. And so, over the course of 100 miles approximately, a jarring ride isn't exactly how one wants to feel good at the end of the day. You heard about the tires I was running, 47 Terreno Drives by Vittoria, but let's talk a little bit about drivetrain. On all of my bikes, I have a Garbaruk 1046 cassette. Love them, happy with them. Here on the Link C though, I do have a 40-tooth front chainring and some 170 millimeter Praxis cranks. On my Haka, I have 165 cranks. Would I have liked that slightly smaller front chainring and slightly smaller cranks? Maybe spin those legs, maybe bring the cadence up a little bit on some of those climbs at Lost and Found, save the leg energy. Yes, I would have liked that, but we don't want to throw the Link C under the bus for two measly chain ring teeth and 5 millimeters of crank length. If there was one thing that didn't work on the Link C, it'd probably be the brakes. I have some low-grade, mid-grade mechanical brakes by TRP on here right now. They work fine for all of my road riding needs, but off-road braking is just a whole different world. The subtlety, the nuance, the power. And so I was not happy with these brakes to the point where, you know, it's a confidence deflator. And so again, over the course of a long day, the last thing you want is things that are bugging you, and the brakes, I would say, were inadequate in comparison to what I was used to, which are just basically, more or less basic hydraulic brakes on the Haka. talked about the bike, and now we're going to talk about the body. And for this part, I need some notes. We're going to talk about nutrition, fueling, things we do for ourselves while we're on these long, hard rides, these races, to keep ourselves feeling good. So I started with a bottle of coconut water, which I love, a bottle of water with SIS gels, a banana in my pocket, some gels. In my small frame bag, I had 2 individual serving size packets of high carb mix, which my plan was to mix up one of those after the second aid station, which was really kind of like the first aid station that most of us stopped at. And that's the aid station before the second big hard climb. And I guess that maybe comes around mile 42 or so. This initial plan worked great up until that second aid station, where instantly as I was leaving and starting that second hard climb, I started to feel really depleted, very much not good. And the bottom line is, if you don't train with high carb, just using it at races doesn't really give the bang for the buck that you wish it would. I do not regularly train with that mix, and often by the time I do start drinking it in an event, when I'm already exerted, it just doesn't feel good on my tummy. At this point in the video, you have comments, you have questions, so let's get them in there. So that brings us to the middle part of the race, where I really was pretty much relying on peanut M&Ms and peanut butter pretzels that I stuffed in the back of my jersey pocket. I think that's a little too much fats, a little too much protein. It felt good at the time, but it really ultimately left my stomach feeling pretty uneasy. So as we say here at BIKEVIDS, voila, folks. That leaves us at the last part of the race in terms of our fueling strategy, which I think you could probably tell at this point really wasn't much of a strategy at all. But really, fueling strategy was just about mitigating nausea, trying to drink plain water, trying to put some power down, but after 5 seconds or so, I feel like I want to barf. This was extra tough because the ride ended with a short road climb, but then a flat section with major headwinds. I would have loved to hop onto one of those groups that passed me by, but I just didn't have the physical power, or for sure the mental fortitude, to even hop on with them. But the fact is, knowing that it was ending did, especially when we got to the kind of bike path heading back to town, did put me in a good mood, and that was another lost and found in the books. Is this on? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Okay. I filmed the nuts and bolts yesterday. It's going to come out today. Lots of comments, lots of questions. We want to hear from you. But in the meantime, guess what happened? The new Haka is ready. So since my crash and cracking the last Haka frame, the green one, if you are familiar with the generations of Haka, I've had 3 orange, red ones, and I have had 1 green one, and now this new slate gray is ready. They were out of green, unfortunately. Jack, I don't think you want any of that tea. So this is the bike I would normally be riding in such events. As you heard, very similar to the Lynxie. The comfort, maybe it's the carbon fiber, don't know, maybe it's just because I'm used to it. I definitely find this a little less jarring. Slightly shorter crank, slightly smaller front chainring. But this is it. And I was so inspired by those 47 Terreno dries that I just put a new pair on here. So there you go. I hope you've taken some time to watch my lost and found race footage and experience this year. If you haven't yet, please do so. But most importantly, hey, tell me about your lost and found event. If you've done big, long, hard off-road riding, what are your strategies for success? You know, you could see that this specialty nutrition for me is an ongoing, multi-year work in progress. What if I got nutrition right? Greg would be an unstoppable force. Anywho, I hope you're doing good. I hope you're out riding your bikes, being safe, and having fun. We'll see you next time here at BIKEVIDS. Ciao.